Hey guys, so today what we're going to be doing, number one, I cannot do a live Zoom. We were told yesterday via email by way of the district to Mr. Stevens to then us that we cannot do live Zooms. I want to. I think interacting with you guys and you guys being able to talk to me and ask me questions would be very helpful to you. I know a few of you have asked, y'all have messaged me, some of y'all have emailed me saying we would like to have an actual class, but we can't. That's what's going on. Can't do it, and I'm sorry, I would like to. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna stick to what we're doing. I'm gonna record this, I'm gonna post it, and then I was thinking maybe on Google Classroom, if any of you guys have any questions or problems or whatever, you guys can ask me. I can get to you guys. I know it's kind of weird doing it that way, but it's the best I've got. So what we're going to be doing today is dealing with Federalist 78. So everybody from A-Day has a paper copy. If you were here the last day that we were at school, you got a paper copy of the College Board version of Analyzing Federalist 78. Okay. Everybody that is B-Day, I did not get to see you guys. So that's why it is posted digitally. So honestly, A-Day, B-Day, I don't care. If you want to do it the digital way, that is fine. But if you have the paper copy, you can do the paper copy. Okay. I want y'all to actually do it because it will help you. These documents can come into play in a lot of places. Now, we can scratch off multiple choice. Multiple choice is not going to happen for this test. I wish it would because I think it would help some of you guys. However, these documents are going to come into play. They can be excerpts of the documents, so you're going to have to know what they're saying, or it can be the argumentative essay where you have to know that document inside, outside, backwards, and forwards. So that's why we're going to go through this. This will be our second to last document that we have to do. Our last document is a letter from a Birmingham jail by Martin Luther King Jr. We'll probably do the same thing we're doing right now for that one. So you guys, I'll present, you guys can then ask me questions on Google Classroom. So let's get to this. So where we are, judiciary, under the institutions drop down from my website, make sure you're doing Khan Academy. Khan Academy is still going to count. It was given to you guys well before our school was out, so it is still an assignment. The other things, Federalist 78, if you scroll down, Federalist 78, I am going to be adding a couple of videos to this sometime today. I haven't yet because I thought we were going to be doing this live and then I wouldn't have to, and well, that didn't work out. So what it says right here, Zoom live discussion, that didn't happen. I had to postpone it. I was going to do it today because College Board went ahead and said, hey, we're going to do these study sessions, get everybody to watch. And that's where I asked you guys to watch that yesterday. And I was like, well, let me just move this to today. And then yesterday afternoon, I got the email from Mr. Stevens that said the district is no longer going to allow any kind of live interaction with you guys, which really bugs me. And I know it bugs you, especially the ones that have emailed me and messaged me that you would like to have an actual physical kind of class. This is the best that we can do right now. So make the best of it. So y'all know what's going on Google Classroom. I have set up the AP Government Corona Academy series. A couple of y'all gave me suggestions for a name, and that was kind of what we came up with. So everything that you need to know about the judicial branch is going, for assignments and study purposes, is going to be on there. So pay attention to what I'm posting on there. Everything after the judicial branch business is going to be stuff for this entire year. So that's going to be your study material for the test. Now the test is going to be on Units 1, Units 2, and Units 3. Remember, we did Unit 1 long time ago. That was August and September. That's dealing with the creation of our country, the documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all those things. Federalism is also going to be in there. Unit 2 is actually what we're finishing. Remember, I told you guys we're going to go out of order because we have election stuff that I wanted to do at the beginning of the year. Well, that's not going to be the best solution for us. So about 75% of the AP teachers for this subject teach it in the order that I'm teaching it, and we're all driving ourselves crazy about why did we decide to do that, because now when we have some kind of crazy pandemic, it is kind of, you know, biting us in the butt because it's not the order that College Board suggests. Therefore, we're kind of way behind. So Unit 2 is institutions. Again, that is going to be Article 1, Legislature, Article 2, President, Article 3, Judiciary, and then Bureaucracy. So we're almost finished with all of Unit 2. Remember, Unit 2 is ginormous. And then Unit 3 is going to be Supreme Court cases, civil rights, and civil liberties. It's the funnest unit to do, so that's why I wanted to leave it till the end. It's also kind of putting everything we learned together, but according to College Board, it should be done earlier in the year. So that's the one that we're going to kind of have to scramble, which is why I'm posting things on here dealing with court cases and stuff, because we've only done a little less than half of the court cases because most of them fall into Unit 3. So anyway, pay attention to what's getting put up on Google Classroom. It will help you. So College Board did start these study sessions. So these study sessions are super useful. I'm going to move me. The stuff that's here is the video I told you guys that you needed to be watching, which is AP Government. The person that's doing it is this lady right here. Her name is Jennifer Hitchcock. She is a fantastic teacher. She's kind of goofy. She's a little weird, which is why I like her. So anyway, all of the sessions will be done by her. Check the College Board website for the schedule, because every AP class has somebody that is doing these study sessions because of the coronavirus stuff. So this is something that doesn't usually happen. So you guys are super lucky in that sense. AP GoPo is going to be at 2 p.m. daily live on their YouTube channel. And it can be viewed after the live session as well. She is also uploading, if you look, there's links that will be underneath the video, and it's stuff to help you guys. So it's not just for me, even though she's a teacher, she is teaching you guys as well. So use her to your advantage. She is amazing. So again, everybody that's taking an AP class, College Board has online classes and review sessions that they are doing. So go to College Board's website if you're in any other AP class so you can see when that stuff is, because I'm only paying attention to my stuff right now. So I do want to watch a video concerning Alexander Hamilton. He wrote 51 of the 85 Federalist Papers. So the 78th one is an Alexander Hamilton original, and he's kind of difficult to understand sometimes. He uses a lot of very fluffy and flowery language. So I got to help you guys get around that language so you know cut and dry what he's trying to say in his 7 pages. You can probably squish it down to, you know, a quick little list, and he could have been done then, but he's not. He's got to do it. He's all flowery. He's got to do that. So I'm going to cut off me. I'm going to leave for a second and let you guys watch this video. I'm going to post it on my website, but I figured this would work as well.
The story behind Hamilton's writing of the Federalist Papers is just amazing. He was a practicing lawyer at the time. He'd spent a day at the office litigating cases, defending clients, and he'd come home and dash off a couple of Federalist Papers. Federalist 78 was Alexander Hamilton's famous defense of the proposed federal judiciary. His argument that it would be the branch that was least dangerous to the rights of the people. He was responding to an argument made by a critic of the federal judiciary who wrote under the pen name Brutus. Brutus argued they have made the judges independent in the fullest sense of the word. There is no power above them to control any of their decisions. There is no authority that can remove them, and they cannot be controlled by the laws of the legislature. In short, they are independent of the people, of the legislature, and of every power under heaven. It's not hard to find echoes of the arguments we hear today about the Supreme Court. Modern criticism of the court for going too far in asserting judicial supremacy, for not respecting the other branches or respecting federalism, and that's what Hamilton was responding to when he defended the judiciary, defended its power of judicial review, and defended life tenure. Hamilton isn't advocating that we should give independence to judges simply to free them from the constraints of law and government. Rather, he's giving them independence in a very specific context, in the context of the other branches of government. So the most obvious way that judicial independence helps to check the other branches, it prevents Congress, especially, and also the executive branch, from overrunning the judiciary, from forcing their hand, and it gives the judge a space to use his best judgment in accordance with the legal code, and the precedents to decide the cases faithfully under the Constitution and the laws. The judge exercises discretion in a very limited way after the Constitution, the statutes, the regulations, and the precedents have all been evaluated and brought to bear on the case. There might be this small measure of judgment at the end that the court needs to exercise. But what's important is up to that point, a judge is faithfully reading the laws that bind him. And on top of that, Hamilton recognized that the best judges would be produced by a lifetime of study of the laws, the legal code, precedents, all of the things a judge needs to do in order to faithfully execute his office. That was the purpose of judicial independence, the idea that these judges would need to be protected from the other branches, or else they wouldn't be able to do their job correctly, and they wouldn't have the incentive to leave practice and serve in government. When the court is called upon more and more to decide ever more controversial issues, social issues, cultural issues, issues of competing rights, to decide these cases for society, sometimes once and for all, it's extremely important for the court to exercise the self-restraint that Hamilton promised it would in Federalist 78. Hamilton had an incredibly systematic mind and a clear mind. It always, in the end, came back down to government as a whole and finding a way to ensure that the system as a whole hangs together and succeeds. Hamilton is pressing the case for constitutionalism.
Okay, so that kind of explains what this document is about and what his argument is about. So hopefully that kind of helped you a little bit. Now we're going to get into the actual document. So what you guys were given, I have the exact same stuff that I have up here, except I have added answers to everything. So hopefully that will help you guys out. So 4 questions at the before you read piece or about Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Who are they? What are they? Why are they important? So the first question is, what was the Federalist view of government? So think about it. They are writing this Constitution to kind of explain why the Articles of Confederation didn't work. They're implementing these pieces that the Articles of Confederation didn't have. So they wanted a much stronger government than the Articles were put in place. So they kind of are going to bark strong government out, whereas the Anti-Federalists are going to say, no, little government, the little guy, we want the state to have the power. We want, the individual to have the power and to have the rights. Big government is scary to them still. So the Federalists are kind of looking at what they had, which is going to be your king, your queen, and going, we can take pieces of that strength and utilize it within the Constitution and then create this government around it. And the Anti-Federalists were completely and totally against that. So that's those first 2 spots. Now, why did the Federalists and Anti-Federalists have different viewpoints? Some of it had to do with, jobs, the economy, things like that. We're eventually going to have the back and forth over slave ownership and things like that. A lot of the slave owners are going to be like, but wait, I need to be able to make decisions. I need to be able to, my stuff. Whereas the Federalists are going to think that certain things need to be controlled by the government. So they have very differing viewpoints. The individual or the state being the powerful piece, that's that little g, the little government, or big G, the government having certain powers to, maybe help out certain groups that do not get that help. We see that with the civil rights movement and things like that later in history. So they have very differing opinions, and we talked about that first unit. So even though we are now way into the year, we're still going back to those ideas of the first unit. So it's definitely going to be tested, guys. All right, so how is each side's viewpoint reflected in our political institutions today? So anytime that you see pieces of federalism where the states or the individuals get some rights, some abilities, that's very much an anti-federalist idea. When the government is coming into your life more, or has a hold over something, or is in charge of something, that's the big government, that's the federalist side of things. Now, some people will argue the fact that the government has gotten too big, too in our business, too, in our face. And I don't think that that's what the Federalists of the 1700s were thinking about. They weren't thinking that the government would be involved in all of these other aspects of our lives, regulating soap and the amount of water that comes out of our sinks and things like that. But that's kind of how they have evolved, okay? So let's talk about this document. The first piece of the document is the very beginning of it. Remember, every Federalist paper is to a certain group of people. Who do y'all remember? To the people of New York. The Federalists are going to be delegates of New York, and they are going to be writing to the people of New York. Remember, the Federalist Papers are to advertise, to push something. They're pushing this Constitution, this new document, onto the people because the people have to vote. So when we're looking at each one of these questions as we go through the analysis, I'm going to talk through them, and then I'm going to give you an answer. So the check your understanding says to paraphrase. Remember, paraphrase, I need to know you know what they're saying. Paraphrase Hamilton's purpose and focus for this essay. So the main idea, why is he writing this? Where can y'all find that in this little piece is what they're asking. So basically, his main idea, the necessity of a national judiciary. So a national judiciary is saying we need to have a group of judges somehow, some way, in the national sense that is going to take care of stuff. We're going to have local courts, we're going to have state courts, we're going to have, all those multiple levels of courts, but we need to have the big one at the top, the national judiciary. So the necessity of it, so he's saying it's a need, it's a necessity. The necessity of a national judiciary has been made clear due to our experiences under the Articles of Confederation. So he's bringing that other document that failed. He's saying, because this failed, this is why we need it. We found that we needed this because this other document that we created did not work. As there is wide agreement on this, this essay will focus on the structure and powers that the judiciary will have, as these issues seem to be the subject of disagreement. So do y'all remember who was disagreeing? Who was the anti-Federalist writer? It was Brutus. So the Brutus or the anti-Federalist papers are basically saying the judiciary, this national judiciary, is a bad idea. So Hamilton, his argument is, I'm going to tell you why a national judiciary is a good idea, okay? So next piece, and this particular excerpt is going to be dealing with, do you understand what's actually being discussed? So some of these things are hard to understand. I told you he uses flowery and fluffy wording, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand. So he refers to good behavior. So it actually says, all judges who may be appointed by the United States are to hold their offices during good behavior. And it has that semicolon. It says, which is conformable to the most approved of the state constitutions, and among the rest, to that of the state. So what does he mean by good behavior? Does that mean that you're not getting arrested? What does he mean? So what he means is good behavior is essentially a lifetime appointment. You do not get impeached, and you do not get removed. So good behavior literally means you're appointed for life and you do your job. Done. Okay? So good behavior for me as a teacher. I got my job and I haven't gotten fired. Good job. So I've had good behavior. So next piece. The source analysis is where you're going to have to go into the actual document and figure out what is he talking about, okay? So it says, according to Hamilton's argument, why does lifetime appointment secure an impartial administration of the laws? Now you gotta kind of pick that apart. Impartial administration of the laws. What does it mean to be impartial? Okay, I'm gonna give y'all a minute to think about what does it mean to be an impartial judge or an impartial justice. And what that means is that this lifetime appointment can secure impartial administration of the laws by granting the judiciary independence from Congress. So they should be non-political. They should not have a partisan idea that's going to push them one way or the other. They are separate from the executive. They are separate. They are impartial. The court would not be under any influence of Congress or the executive branch, the president. I'm gonna move myself back up here. So consider that an impartial jury that's usually where you hear the word impartial, means that they don't have anybody telling them how to vote for a case, guilt or not guilt or whatever. They don't have somebody saying this is what you should be doing or whatever. They have their heads, their thoughts, their minds. Nobody, pushing them. This next piece, checking your understanding. What does Hamilton mean by the power of the sword? Again, weird Hamilton wording. The power of the sword and the power of the purse. Now we know power of the purse. We've talked about that. We've talked about that a lot, and that's one of those main things I told you guys to remember. Now the power of the sword, that's kind of a strange term, okay? So it says, the executive not only dispenses the honors, but holds the sword of the community. Okay, so there's your sword. And then it says the legislature not only commands the purse, you guys remember that one, power of the purse, but prescribes the rules by which the duties and rights of every citizen are to be regulated. And then he says, and this is what the judicial branch should do. This is the judiciary. The judiciary, on the contrary, has no influence over either the sword or the purse. No direction either of strength or of wealth of society, and can take no active resolution whatever. Okay, so what is he talking about? Sword and purse. The power of the sword connects to the president's power as commander-in-chief. The judicial branch can't say yes or no to war, can't say yes or no to any kind of troops being sent. They are impartial. And the power of the purse refers to Congress's ability to appropriate money, government spending. Remember, power of the purse. Now, connecting to our content, it says write a claim. Now, this is going into these FRQs. To write a claim, it means you have to pick a side, you have to pick something, you have to pick an opinion. Write a claim explaining whether there is any way in which the judiciary could potentially influence the sword or the purse. Okay, so they're not giving you the argument. You're having to make the claim yourself. So how do you think, all 100 of you that are watching, how do you think the judiciary could potentially influence the sword, the president and his power concerning commander-in-chief, or the purse, the Congress's control over government spending? How do you think, which can they, would they, could they? And this is kind of ideas. So you guys should state or should have stated some kind of claim in your heads or on your paper, or on your digital copy, with a line of reasoning. Okay, I needed to put that on there to make sure you understood the FRQ, specifically the argumentative FRQ. You have to state a claim, you have to pick a side, you got to stick with your side, and then you have to have a line of reasoning, meaning you have to explain the why and the how of your argument. Okay, remember, for you guys, that's been a big weak spot, is your reasoning for things, and offer relevant evidence in support of the claim. So I'm not going to tell you guys this. I want y'all to sit and think about it. How could the judicial system, the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, what could they do that could possibly influence Congress or the president? And this is a big debate, actually, even today, concerning the power that the judicial branch has, specifically the Supreme Court has, over the other two branches, because they can influence so many things. But I'm not going to tell you guys. I want you guys to think about it. We'll probably come back to it, or we'll talk about it on Google Classroom for anybody that has questions. So moving on. Source analysis, again, going into the document. That's what that means. The source is the document, analyzing the document. Highlight or underline why, according to Hamilton's argument, is it important to give the judiciary some protections against the other two departments or branches. So I'm going to read this real quick. This simple view of the matter suggests several important consequences. And remember, consequences, good and bad. It proves incontestably, this is awesome, y'all. I promise I can read. Incontestably, that the judiciary is beyond comparison the weakest. Okay, so he's saying the judicial branch, the judiciary, is the weakest piece of our three-branch government, of the three departments of power, that it can never attack with success either of the two other branches, and that all possible care is requisite to enable it to defend itself against their attacks. All right, so what? Highlight and underline why it is important to give the judiciary some protections against the other two branches, give them some checks, basically. And this is what you should have figured out or underlined or highlighted on either your paper or your digital copy. Judiciary is beyond comparison the weakest. Okay, so he hasn't said how, he has just said they are the weakest, and that all possible care is requisite to enable it to defend itself. It has to be able to defend itself. It has to have that balance, the checks on the other branches to keep them all level and equal. Okay, so source analysis again, going into the document. According to Hamilton's argument, how is liberty secured by the separation of powers? Okay, so remember, and we're going to go back. He actually discusses some Montesquieu stuff. Do you guys remember Montesquieu? He's the guy that was like, everybody made fun of him. We called him Mosquito. He is the guy that came up with 3 branches of government, the idea of the 3 branches, not for us, but for France, and the separating of powers to make sure that they're not one big scary mass, that they are 3 separate things. So why might this not work? So the quote from Montesquieu that's in here, there is no liberty if the power of judging be not separated from the legislative and executive powers. So he takes somebody else's words right there and he says, this dude said this, and this is why it is correct. So why might this not work? Hamilton states that the judiciary alone, considering its weakness, now again, we don't know its weakness exactly, cannot harm the rights of the people. However, the liberty of the people, remember, our freedoms could be under threat if the courts took power from or ceded power to another branch. So we have to keep them separate and not able to like co-conspire with one of the other branches. Where was I? Branch separation of powers provides a cure for that threat. If we separate them and they can never come together in any way, then they're never going to join forces. If we make sure that they are completely separated and the other one, and they always have to check each other, then there's no way that this court can become, super powerful or anything like that. Court, giving the court a way to defend themselves against any attacks by the other 2 branches. So separating them and having checks and balances is going to allow them to make sure that the other 2 branches can't like gobble them up, make them smush together or anything like that. And again, he goes back and he uses Montesquieu as his backer, which is basically saying, kind of like Thomas Jefferson did with John Locke in the Declaration of Independence. All right, so checking your understanding. Can you figure out what's going on? And it says, and that as nothing can contribute so much to its firmness and independence as permanency in office, this quality may therefore be justly regarded as an indispensable ingredient in its constitution, and in a great measure as the citadel of the public justice and the public security. Okay, so what? According to Hamilton, how does lifetime tenure, okay, he actually says lifetime tenure in there, but he doesn't say those exact words. Permanency in office, okay? Again, let's go back to the beginning of the judiciary. They are appointed for life. That is a lifetime tenure. So how does a lifetime tenure or permanency in office of judges and justices help secure justice, help secure this idea of justice? Says it is an indispensable ingredient. So this idea of a lifetime tenure is the main ingredient that is going to keep the public justly served and secure. Okay, so continuing on. According to Hamilton's argument, what is the duty of the courts in a limited constitution? Remember, we have created a constitution that limits certain powers of the government. So what is the duty of the courts in a limited constitution, and how might that duty be impaired? Okay, it says limitations of this kind can be preserved in practice no other way than through the medium of courts of justice, whose duty it must be to declare all acts contrary to the manifest tenor of the Constitution void. Without this, all reservations of particular rights or privileges would amount to nothing. So part of this is he is looking and saying, our rights and privileges without this piece of government would amount to nothing. All right, so Hamilton is referring to judicial review. Okay, we talked about that last time with Marbury versus Madison, and it's the power of the courts to declare laws inconsistent with the Constitution. So this is a big deal because in the Constitution, judicial review doesn't exist. However, right here, Hamilton is saying basically that that is what their job will be. And we remember, we don't really know that until 1803 with Marbury versus Madison. So it's interesting that this is written so many years before they realize, oh, judicial review, this is what we're doing, unconstitutional or constitutional. So it's interesting that we never really saw it at that point, that judicial review was their job. All right, next one, underline the assumption of the Anti-Federalists. Okay, so this is basically Hamilton saying, this is what the Anti-Federalists are saying. And he basically, in this excerpt, says, some perplexity respecting the rights of the courts to pronounce legislative acts void, because contrary to the Constitution has arisen from an imagination that the doctrine would imply a superiority of the judiciary to the legislative power. So basically explaining that he's looking at the idea of what the Anti-Federalists are saying and explaining that they are wrong. This idea that the judiciary was going to legislate and determine laws right or wrong, he is completely incorrect. Interesting fact, guys, that's exactly what they do. It's kind of funny that this is, we look back, you know, hindsight's 2020, but if we look back, Hamilton is completely incorrect because they actually do basically determine a lot of things concerning legislation. But remember, they are a reactive branch, so you got to go to them for that to ever happen. So it's kind of interesting that that's a thing. All right, we're getting close, guys. We're almost at the end. I really wish you guys were here to talk, though. This it's not the best. Okay, so this one's a very long excerpt. It's a source analysis. So again, we're going into that particular document. It says, based on Hamilton's argument, what would be the danger of allowing Congress, okay, what's the danger in allowing Congress to determine the constitutionality of their acts? Now, to me, just knowing Congress, I think that's hilarious because Congress is always going to think they're right. And then how does this further develop his counter argument to critics? I'm going to move myself over a little bit. Okay, so the danger would be that members of Congress might substitute their own will over that of the people. So kind of what we fear about Congress could happen. Who ratified the Constitution. In the prior paragraph, he states that allowing Congress to do this is like putting the deputy Congress above the principal. Okay, so that'd be like putting me above Mr. Stevens. This furthers his refutation. What does it mean? Think about, what does it mean to refute? He is going against of the counter argument through his concern that placing all that authority in the hands of Congress would threaten the idea of a government whose powers are limited by a constitution. You guys might also draw from knowledge that the Anti-Federalists were proponents of limited government. The Anti-Federalists really, really wanted to limit, hold back, keep the government back. So if you discussed something like that in your answer, then yes, good job. Proponents of limited government on the national level, this making Hamilton's rebuttal even more effective. So this is him taking that Anti-Federalist argument and flipping it and saying you're wrong because he's basically kind of saying it's laughable that allowing Congress to determine the constitutionality of their acts. That's crazy. How does this further the development of the counter argument to the critics of judicial review? And that goes into that idea, if you referred to the Anti-Federalists and the fact that they wanted the limited government. He's saying that that is what's going to happen. Limiting, separating, and checking and balancing equals they're not going to do what you're afraid of. All right. Oh, I gotta move me again. So source analysis, going back into the document, how does Hamilton further define the role of the courts and what line of reasoning? Okay, Line of reasoning, guys. Here's our weakness. What line of reasoning does he use or he employ here to support his claim? So remember, he is basically writing a persuasive argument here. That's all of the Federalist Papers are. They're persuading people. And so he is going to have to make a claim. His claim is that a lifetime judicial branch is a great thing. The judicial branch is a good thing. Separating it is a good thing. Lifetime tenure is a good thing. And then he is giving us all of his reasons why. Okay. Again, going back to FRQs, you guys are going to need to know how to do that. Okay. Hamilton is explaining on the check that judicial review will have on Congress. Remember, judicial review, we don't really think about it again until we get into 1803 Marbury versus Madison, but right here in this document, before the Constitution is even ratified, he is explaining it. That judicial review will have on Congress. He devotes some space to defining a constitution as fundamental law, and that the courts must have the sole power to interpret the Constitution. That's a big deal, saying that that is their job, and determine if any laws contradict it. Remember though, reactive branch, we've got to go to them. They don't go around picking at laws. It's when we feel our rights have been taken away in some form or fashion. That's when we go to the courts. They don't come to us. The courts must place the Constitution above any law. So again, supremacy clause, Article 6, sitting there, supreme document. We don't go against that. Whatever it says is the end. Above any law given, that the intention of the people, again, who approve the Constitution, must be placed above the intention of the Congress where there is a conflict. His line of reasoning, okay, so if you guys were looking and you found a line of reasoning, you might have identified definition or classification as the line of reasoning based on the use of defining both a constitution and judicial review. You might have cited the process as a line of reasoning. So you would need to support that though, okay? The way that you would support it, discuss how Hamilton lays out the process of judicial review and how it causes the two branches to interact, okay? So your line of reasoning is your why, okay? Why is this right? Why is this wrong? You've got to make sense of your arguments. Okay, checking our understanding. In the space below, the paragraphs summarize how Hamilton refutes. Again, refutes is going against the critique that the power of judicial review would make the court superior to other branches. So again, he's hitting that anti-federalist argument, them saying, well, this judicial branch is going to be the big old scary branch. It's going to take over everything. And he is going to refute that argument. So he basically says the Constitution is going to provide for a limited government. We've created a limited government. So you're not going to have one branch being the big, mean, scary thing that's going to gobble everything up. That will protect the liberties of the people through the administration of justice. Their job is to make sure our rights are protected. It must be able to check the power of Congress when it exceeds the authority expressed under the Constitution. And you might have also discussed in there that Hamilton sees the Constitution as the express intent of the people who ratified it. He goes back to this idea that it's for us. It is created for us. And that intent needs to be protected against any opposing intent by Congress. So he likes to sit there and kind of use Congress as kind of like the bad guys that the judicial branch is going to keep away from us and make sure that they're not exceeding their powers. All right, so how is Hamilton's argument expressed in the workings of our government today? So this says, if then the courts of justice are to be considered as the bulwarks of there's a fun word to go look up, of a limited constitution against legislative encroachments. Now, legislative encroachment, any of y'all that play football, you should know what encroachment means. So legislative encroachment means they're getting in your business. The consideration will afford a strong argument for the permanent tenure of judicial offices. Permanent tenure, life appointment. Since nothing will contribute so much as this to that independent spirit in the judges, which must be essential to the faithful performance of so arduous a duty. Again, arduous, there's another film, bulwarks and arduous, you should look this up. So how is Hamilton's argument expressed in the workings of our government today? So this was in the 1700s. How do we see his argument in place today? And honestly, it's easy. Judicial review, the independence of the courts when they exercise judicial review, because you can have the legislature creates a law, gets that, the bill is passed, goes through all the committees, boom, we got a bill that is now law, boom, we send it to the president, he signs it, it's put in practice, and then we realize, the people, we realize wait a second, my rights are being infringed upon by this law. Then we go to the court. They reactive branch, okay? So they are very independent and they are protectors of our rights by way of judicial review. All right, we're getting close. All right, highlight or underline the additional reason outlined here in support of lifetime tenure. Okay, so that idea of permanency of the judicial branch, lifetime tenure of federal judges and justices. So look, we're ending all the way. Signed, Publius. All right, so there's a couple of places you should deal with. Okay, so voluminous code of laws is one of the inconveniences necessarily connected with the advantages of a free government. It is indispensable that they should be bound down by strict rules and precedents. Records of those precedents, if y'all remember, a precedent is something that has happened before and we look back to as kind of the law, the thing to do, the tradition, must unavoidably swell to a very considerable bulk and must demand long and laborious study to acquire a content knowledge of them. Okay, so that means he's saying that these judges, these justices, they're going to have to be scholars of the law. Okay, that is all. They eat it, they breathe it, they study it. They know the law, they know the Constitution. But few men in society who will have sufficient skill in the laws to qualify them. So basically, even though we don't have, in the Constitution, those qualifications of who should be a justice, only a few men in society will have that skill, and we will be able to figure that out to qualify them for stations of judges. Then the last piece to underline or highlight, the number must be still smaller of those who unite the requisite integrity with the requisite knowledge, okay? Not very many people are going to be able to be these people that are going to be judges and justices with a lifetime tenure, okay? So it says, again, highlight and underline the additional reasons or reason outlined here in support of a lifetime tenure. You're going to be getting the best of the best by way of appointment and Senate confirmation for somebody to be on these benches as judges or justices. They have to know every law code. They have to be bound to these rules, to this Constitution, and they have to be so incredibly knowledgeable about all of the laws, all of the precedents, everything that's come before them, to where this is what their job is, basically. So support of a lifetime tenure. These people have been working for this job and to keep this job. Okay, now remember, the only way you can get out of being a justice, you can retire. So you can be old age and you're like, I'm done. You can be impeached and removed, and same sort of things for impeachment of a justice is going to be the same for a president. Or you can die. So those are your three ways to get out. So there is a way out, but once you are appointed, confirmed, you are there for life unless one of those three things happens. Okay, so 3 things. 1, Hamilton makes the argument that we need a judicial branch. He makes the argument of they need to have a lifetime tenure. And he makes the argument that this branch is not going to overpower the other 2 branches in any way, shape, or form. He uses a specific person. He goes back to Montesquieu. If you guys remember Montesquieu from the very first unit, our philosophers. So you guys need to know those things about this document. Why a judiciary? Why do we need it? Why do the people need it? Why lifetime tenure? Y'all need to know why lifetime tenure. And how it's not going to be overpowering and too powerful for the other branches to deal with. Why is it not going to gobble up those other branches? And always remember that he uses Montesquieu. So all these guys are super duper smart, but other guys have said stuff and they're like, good idea. I'm going to use that in my document. Okay. I'm going to put this on Google Classroom after I edit it because my kid walked in like 3 times. So I have to kind of chop up a couple things. Sorry. I'll let you guys know. Any questions you have, please give me a comment on Google Classroom. I will get to you guys. I will hang out on Google Classroom sometime tomorrow going through things. So make sure, you know, I'm going to put those videos on the website. I'm going to put this video on Google Classroom. And I will still try and fight for live Zoom, but I don't think it's going to happen. Not going to lie. I miss you guys a little bit. I miss your weird comments. I miss Darius saying strange things for no reason in the middle of class. I miss fussing at Mason for doing random weird things. I even miss telling you guys to wake up. So I wish we could do a live. I really, really do. So until next time, I will see you guys. Toodaloo.